The Scopes Monkey Trial
by Jill DeMayo and Becca Kaplan. In 1925, John Scopes, a biology teacher in Dayton, Tennessee, became famous thanks to the trial we know today as the Scopes Monkey Trial.
The trial took place on May 5, 1925. Scopes was charged with a misdemeanor of $100.
Scopes taught his students from Hunter's Civic Biology, which had an entire chapter of Darwin's idea of evolution. The Scopes Monkey Trial was such a big deal in the 20s because it essentially went against the Butler Act. The Butler Act stated law prohibiting public school teachers from denying the biblical account of man's origin, or, in other words, unlawful to teach human evolution in any state-funded school. John Washington Butler started this act. He thought that evolution was dangerous.
The curriculum during the 20s was already changing. More people from high school were starting to look for careers because it was after World War I. Teachers weren't allowed to teach variation or natural selection, which limited their students' education.
Scopes said himself, "We are not able to see how the prohibition of teaching the theory that man has descended from a lower order of animals gives preference to any religious establishment or mode of worship. So, as far as we know, there is no religious establishment or organized body that has in its creed or confession of faith any article denying or affirming such a theory."
In 1859, Darwin's Origin of Species was written. Some people accepted this new revelation. However, most Christians denied it. They believed God created man and there was no scientific explanation. A minister said, "The title to a house which you have prepared as a habitation for your old age is now a fraud. If Jesus Christ didn't rise from the dead, we cannot depend on a word he says." This idea of evolution was seen as going against the dominant religion.
In the 20s, a Texas mother said, "I am a Christian mother and I am not going to let that rot go into Texas textbooks."
During this time of anti-evolution, John Scopes and a group of friends, including George Rappleyea, were meeting at a drugstore. While they were discussing their views on fundamentalism, they thought of a scheme to put their town on the map. Rappleyea convinced Scopes to go against the law by teaching his biology students theories of evolution.
After Scopes taught his students Darwin's theory of evolution, George reported Scopes as planned, which began one of the largest confrontations of the 20s.
The lawyers on this case were considered celebrity lawyers. The most famous was Clarence Darrow, who had worked with other popular cases during that time. His appearance is accountable for much of the publicity that the case brought.
Other memorable lawyers were Arthur Garfield Hayes and Dudley Field Malone.
This case was a battle between the arrogance of scientists versus the arrogance of fundamentalists.
Scientists argued that no one had ever seen a soul in a test tube or a lab experiment. They believed that certain things could not be explained.
Rural people who were more connected with nature had more fundamentalist views.
City people differed because they believed the more scientific aspect, since they were always around mechanical processes and assembly lines.
During the trial, many different problems were being discussed and fought for. The court was focusing on Scopes violating the law, but not what the law stood for. The defense team, along with Rappleyea and Scopes, were determined to focus on the law itself.
The trial seemed ordinary until William Jennings Bryan was called to the stand. He was asked to read excerpts from the Bible. He read about the stories of Jonah and the whale, the language from Babel, and the stories of Adam and Eve. These were all taken literally by Bryan, which proved his point of anti-evolution.
However, when he was asked to read the creation of the world and how the Bible said that it only took 6 days, he explained that those 6 days might have been millions of years. He interpreted the Bible, which shocked the people in the courtroom and thousands of Americans listening on the radio.
Bryan proved that the Bible could be open for interpretations, which could mean the story of evolution could well be true. It was something that differed from what the Bible said exactly, but it was quite plausible.
At the end of the trial, Scopes was found guilty and fined $100 by Judge Ralston. Regardless of the verdict, did Scopes truly lose? The long-term legacies and effects of this trial show that he did more than win. He changed the powerful education system in America.
Did this trial end the debate over anti-evolution?
No.
Right. Despite that, it represented a large milestone for the anti-evolution forces. Of the 15 states with anti-evolution legislation pending in 1925, only Arkansas and Mississippi brought upon laws restricting Darwin's theory.
Until we can prove how the world started and where we came from, no one will ever truly know who technically won this case. However, this case brought the everlasting effect of the separation of church and state.
It took men like Scopes and Bryan to show America that sometimes it is okay to step back and alter what you believe in.
It doesn't change who you are,
but progress is sometimes change,
and progress is what we needed.